We're with James Newman, the artistic director of Summer Repertory Theater, our neighbor here next to the Santa Rosa JC campus. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you here. And good to talk about theater. It's a thriving thing here in Santa Rosa and Sonoma County at large.
Absolutely.
Where does SRT fit into that spectrum?
Well, you know, we're a little unusual for some communities, and in many ways because we have such a long history here.
Right.
This will be our 46th season.
Really?
Yeah, 46
Wow.
years. So that sort of has established us as kind of a cornerstone in the theater scene.
I'd say so. Yeah.
And so it makes it sort of has given us. Staying power, I suppose. Well,
yeah, you're clearly not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere,
yeah.
And the community is really supportive of us. So it allows us to do shows that are in some ways bigger because we're partnered with the junior college. We're a program of the junior college, and therefore, you know, we have this 600 seat space, which is being remodeled, hopefully in the very near future. And it's sort of, I feel like we're a really important part of the scene just because of how long we've been around.
Yeah. And as I understand, one of the more professional enterprises in terms of local theater. Is that correct?
Well, I hope so. I mean,
when I say professional, I mean, like, is it an equity house? Is it?
It's not an equity house.
Okay.
Essentially, what we're doing is we're a summer stock company.
Great.
So we're a professional summer stock company that's partnered with the college in order to provide training for advanced college and graduate students from around the country. So go ahead.
Oh, so the people you bring in actually from outside of the area.
Absolutely,
they're professionals that are.
Yes,
okay, that's great.
Yeah. So I do a recruiting tour. I go out on the road for about 3 weeks looking for both actors and technicians.
Oh, interesting.
We generally recruit 25, depends on the season, 25 actors that are all in 3 out of our 5 shows in the summer.
Oh, wow.
And in addition to that, we have technicians, musicians, everything sort of under the sun for theater. There's about 75 more of them that come from not all California, but all throughout the country.
That's a huge production.
Yeah.
So, okay, so for the sake of our viewers who may not be familiar, summer stock, repertory, what do these mean?
So what we do is what's called full rotating repertory. Okay. So the word repertory used to mean multiple shows happening simultaneously. It sort of doesn't mean
the same
that quite
cast
so much.
moving.
Yeah. It's a very old-fashioned kind of thing, but audiences love it because you get to see you get to know an actor, and you get to see them play a serious role and a comedic role and something else. You see them star in something and then be a supporting character in something else.
You see a range,
Yeah. So we do 5 shows, but combinations of plays and musicals, and we use 2 spaces. So we do 3 shows in our larger space and 2 shows in the smaller space. And once the shows are up and running, then we switch on a nightly basis. So that we pull the sets out, we install the next show. It will run a show or 2, and then it changes over, and we do something else.
And you're the director of these shows.
I'm the artistic director, which means I oversee everything, but I'm also a director. So I direct between 1 or 2 shows in the season every year.
And then do you choose the program?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I'm sort of right in the middle of that process right now.
Well, interesting. So what is that process like? I mean, you have to give enough range for your performers.
Yeah.
And stretch them a bit, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
But also appease a local audience.
Yeah.
What's that like, kind of managing that?
It's, I don't think it's what people think it is. I think people visualize, a person in my position sitting around and, drinking coffee and really thinking about art all the time. I do that. I do that quite a bit, believe you me. But it's not only about that. I not only have to consider the sort of amount of roles, and that comes into, there's mathematics involved. So I have to think about the genders. So I have to think about roles for women, roles for men. Because we're doing in full rep, the numbers have to be right around equal in the 5. There's always one show that all the actors are in, and then they get split up into 2 out of the other 4. So you can see the sort of math problem that begins to exist.
I mean, do you graph this? Do you have like the flow chart?
Yeah, it's kind of like, they always call it a house of cards, because if one thing sort of is out of whack, then that will all disappear. So sometimes there's shows that I absolutely love that I just can't make work, or like last season we had a show which had a ton of men in it, which I loved. It was Peter and the Starcatcher. I adored it. I really wanted to produce it, but I had to find something that had a lot of women to play opposite it, so that my ladies had an opportunity as well. So there's a lot of that happens, and then of course I think about sort of the experience of for the actors, and then the experience for the audience.
And then do you? I mean, obviously you're balancing the genders. Do you worry about ethnicity and stuff like that when you're casting?
Absolutely. So we're really trying to be as diverse as possible, and in many ways, not because. For no other reason than often that's where the good stories are.
Right. Fair enough.
Like it's not an issue of really wanting to check boxes for me. It's more there's some really great stories
material.
out there. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, okay, so you've got the math problem. You've got aesthetic notions that you certainly want to explore, and then a pedagogical thing. I think you want. Like these actors need to be trained, and the tech people need to learn. You've got 70 people, it seems like, all moving parts, all at once. Okay. How do you choose a show? Do you have like this sort of like encyclopedic knowledge of all theater ever written? I mean,
I wish I did. No.
Is there like a database you can put this data into, and then it comes back out? These are the 5 shows that might actually work.
You know what's funny?
And it's always Brigadoon, and
it's always Brigadoon. Well, if you think about what audiences are interested in, and one of the great things about what we do at Summer Rep is that our audiences typically will see our whole season. I would say 70-75% of our audience sees 3 or more of our shows.
The subscribers.
Subscribers, and then just people that come and they want to see more than one thing. So you really try to vary it. So in some ways it's if I'm going to do sort of a golden age musical, well then I can balance that out with something that's new and people maybe haven't heard of, and so it sort of starts there. So I feel like once in a while I'll be like, I want to do this kind of thing, or we haven't done a really small show, a show with 2 actors in our small space. Like I really want to do a romantic comedy with only 2 actors, because we just haven't done that in a little while. So it starts there, and then you sort of build and you begin to balance and all of that.
Well, we have to take a break now, but when we come back, let's talk about sort of where audiences land these days in terms of their threshold of tolerance for new works and maybe more adventuresome work versus the standards that that always work. So we're with James Newman, the artistic director of SRT, Summer Repertory Theater. We'll be right back.
Hey, sir. No, the other thing, rootless, sir. Rootless, heartless, and peerless. Guilty as charged. Now, give us the key.
Never.
Playing games is for children, Lord Astor, and I hate children.
So stars are so dangerous, why are you after?
We're with James Newman, the artistic director of Summer Repertory Theater here on the Santa Rosa Junior College campus, right next to us here at CMedia. We left off talking about the threshold of tolerance audiences have for like new works or works that kind of push their boundaries in terms of what they think of as theater. How do you find local audiences?
I think audiences are willing to be adventurous. They also like things that they know.
Right.
And that always is a bit of a balance, because...
But do you feel you have a responsibility to kind of introduce new works to them, or?
I do, absolutely I do. I just think as an artist, I think you want to promote, new material and new voices and new ways of looking at things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a two-way street. So you want to promote that artist. You also want to promote like the audience's sort of like ability to understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I always look for something for them to latch onto.
Okay.
And so when I'm looking for, and let's be honest, like I think the theater audience is an older population. I think our demographic in general, and that's been the case. I mean, I remember having this same conversation when I was in my 20s.
It will always be the case.
It is always the case, and I don't. And people ask me why. I don't actually know why. I think it might have something to do with, people having kids at a certain age, and then that taking up their time, and they're doing carpools, and they don't really have time for the theater
something
necessarily.
In the genome that kicks in at 45, 50.
Yeah, and they come back, and so when you go and you notice a certain age in your audience, I think it's also my responsibility to give those people what they want in some ways. But what I tend to do is, because we do 5 shows in such a short time period, I mean, we only produce for 7 weeks in the summer. Yeah. So 30,000 people come to see our shows in 7 weeks. It's actually a tremendously high number of audience members. But I can throw in something new, that's something really challenging, and also give them something that they're familiar with. But when I give them something they're familiar with, my mission tends to always be, and I think it's because of my background, I want to take a new spin on it. I want to look at something. So like last season we did South Pacific, which is a standard, but is a play about race and racism.
Fair enough, right?
And so I really wanted to take a modern look where we are as a society at race and racism, and present it within the context of this golden age musical.
Which is a wonderful lens to put on issues, contemporary issues. Yeah.
Right.
So speaking of your background, where did you start? I mean, was theater always an ambition for you?
I've only done theater, I'm just one of those people that has only ever done theater.
That's great. Did you come up through academia, or?
Yes and no. I started doing, I was just lucky, I started doing professional children's theater when I was 11.
Are we in Seattle at this point?
No, I grew up in Denver.
Okay.
And so I sort of got introduced to the theater as a craft very early on.
And as an actor, I would imagine.
Yeah, so I was an actor. It's where almost everybody starts. And but I think I was lucky. Instead of sort of doing school shows or after-school-y kind of shows, which I certainly did, but in the beginning I was with a professional company, so I knew very early on that there were people behind the scenes, and there were there was an entire
sort of ecosystem,
craft that was involved in creating theater. So my one part of it as an actor was a part of a larger system that then became very important to me.
Did you have mentors within that?
Yeah, actually, I think that is one of the strongest things. I think I had a very early mentor who just who was a professional theater person. So he was a director and an actor and a producer, and I think that shaped sort of where I ended up.
Well, theater gives you that culture too, where there is a sort of like a sense of, like you're saying, craft that gets passed on the apprentice from master to apprentice.
Very much so. I don't think people understand like how old-fashioned it kind of is. That is literally the way, that especially directors and designers sort of work their way up through our business.
What did you take from your mentor? Any particular lesson that was resonant?
It's that it was always very serious. Like, no, it was always like, and I ended up being a very serious kid, and so then I got as an actor, as a young actor, I did a lot of classical theater. I did a lot of Shakespeare. I did a lot of all of that stuff. So, pardon me, my phone is going off. How embarrassing.
That's your mentor calling you.
Yeah, saying like, hey, James Oliver was his name. Sorry, James. So anyway, I knew that it was something people took seriously. It wasn't just something people did for fun. It wasn't wearing costumes just for fun, or there was a certain amount of just professionalism, I guess, is the easiest way to talk about it.
And then in terms of your own craft, right, as an actor, what did you take back to the stage when you became director? And do you prefer one over the other? I mean,
I don't know. That's a great question. It's been a long time since I've acted. I stepped into a couple roles here at Summer Rep that I sort of did for fun, but I think I enjoy being a director more. It's far more collaborative, and so you're working with designers and musicians and other people. You're really building this 360 kind of living, breathing thing, and you're doing it all together. I don't believe in sort of that auteur kind of art where I have a vision that everyone else will do. We do it together, and our ideas are better because we're building on other people's ideas.
And so you've gone from Denver, and then you were in Seattle, and I think you went to school.
Yeah, I went to undergraduate at the University of Washington.
And then you came here. Difference between the experiences with theater? I mean, Seattle's kind of more of a theater town, I think, traditionally.
Seattle, I think, is very much defined by, maybe it's my age too, but like there's sort of this 20-something grunge-ness
it's
to.
Still there.
It's still there. It really is still there. And so we did a lot of experimental theater. We did, my background is actually not commercial mainstream theater. I did a lot of adaptation. I did a lot of classical theater. I didn't really grow up doing musicals. I'm not a singer. I'm not a musician in that way.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, now I'm doing a lot of that. But I think it really has allowed me to look at theater through the lens of what these things that are perhaps more mainstream, more commercial, but how to really dig for the depth that's still there.
There's a reason they've endured.
Right.
And it's fascinating. I wonder though, like when you were like an ink-stained wretch kid, did you I would never do this kind of crap?
If my 22-year-old self would look at my 44-year-old self, I think I would roll my proverbial eyes at myself. But one of the things I love so much is taking stories that people think that they know and presenting them in a new light. And I gravitate towards stories of prejudice, but I think I do them in a way that makes them really palatable for a mainstream audience.
Let's pick up on this when we come back with James Newman, the artistic director of Summer Repertory Theater next door at Santa Rosa JC. Right back. Thanks.
It's my wedding day. I haven't met my husband yet, but I'm hopeful anyway. I'll wear a gown, we'll have a ball, and dance forevermore. He'll take me in his massive arms and spin me around the floor. I've always been a morning person, a morning girl. Hooray!
We are with James Newman, the artistic director of SRT, Summer Repertory Theater, next door. I don't know what it is about SRT. I just want to say SRT, and I always forget that it's Summer Repertory Theater. You only do it during the summer.
It is only in the summer. Yeah, absolutely.
So we left off talking about some of the themes that you've been pursuing throughout your career and taking, in this case, shows that are sort of chestnuts and then finding, digging into the marrow of them and finding what makes them salient and how they can address some of the things you're interested in.
Right.
One of them being prejudice.
Absolutely.
How does that work for you?
I think it's oddly. I think it's kind of easy. I actually think in the theater we are interested in looking at what is other, and it's not. And prejudice is such a major theme as human beings, and I'm not just talking about racial prejudice, just in
the abstract.
In general, like the treatment of people is something that I think storytellers want to talk about, and whether that is within relationships or it can be small, it can be large. I tend to find those themes relatively easily.
Yeah, and prejudice is interesting, as you're saying. There's a sort of otherizing factor,
right?
And I think there's an inherent culture in theater of feeling like others. It starts with drama club.
And that's true. We're a home and we're a family.
Yeah.
And so the people that do tend to, and that changes over the years too. But the otherness changes in general. But I think people find their tribe.
They do.
And their family within the theater.
And find their own identities within that context.
Yeah.
And it's a very positive experience, I think, ultimately. So when you're dealing with this kind of themes, what are the pitfalls? I'm sure every show has its own pitfalls.
Sure, it does. I think that I think sometimes you want to avoid beating people over the head with things, and in some ways I have it kind of easy because when you're doing song and dance numbers, it's hard to really be like flogging someone with this major point. I think it's easy to have some subtleties that are meaningful, but at the same time entertaining. I think that again, is one of the things that is special about the theater. That theater is inherently non-realistic.
Right.
We go and we sit in a room. We have a shared experience with
we
audience.
pretend.
We pretend. There's people. There's live human beings. There's in front of you doing whatever they're doing, and so it allows us to just get these little nuggets in there that might stick with people, but at the same time you laugh and
throughout it's a
enjoy it.
tightrope walk because anything could go wrong at any time. Have you had any disasters?
There's always little disasters. Audiences love those. I think that's the thing when I'm in the audience. In my own shows, I'm like, things are, it's hard. But when I go to other theaters and I know something's going on, the energy of the audience just gets a little like, they dropped a glass and what's going to happen now? I mean, it's such a fun communal way of look, what are they going to do? And
I mean, you would never plan something like that. You wouldn't pretend.
No, because then it's not authentic and it kind of robs them.
I mean, not to get hung up on this, but it's fascinating to me. What is it that makes audiences sit on the edge of their seats and get ready to? Is it like trying to maintain that suspension of disbelief, which you say is, it's not actually disbelief,
right?
It's a willing participation. But why do we respond so much to that? Like when something goes wrong on stage, we're like, hell yeah, man.
I think it's rule breaking. You know what I mean? I think it's just like that human thing that we want to see when things go wrong. We want to see someone solve the problem.
Yeah.
And
That's a good point,
we know that it's not supposed to happen like that. When a glass falls and breaks on stage, well, you know the sound of breaking glass, and the sound of fake breaking glass, which we do in the theater as well.
Right.
So when something like that happens, then there's this moment of, the rules have just gotten broken because something real happened in the middle of this pretend that we're watching.
And then a group coalesces and miraculously something occurs, somebody has a great one-line or something like that solves the situation, like you're saying, because it is a problem to be solved, and then the applause is uproarious. People just go apeshit for
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, and I think it would be. I think the audience would feel somehow betrayed if they felt. I would if I felt tricked into being like, well, that you just manipulated me.
Yeah.
And there's not a manipulation that way because it's. It's the irony is as actors and theater people, we strive for truth. We try to live in this moment up there on stage where you and I are having a scene and we're playing brothers and we really work to be brothers, but it's never true.
Right.
And then a real thing happens, like an accident, someone trips, or somebody's fly is down, or like the little silly things that happen in your everyday life, but it happens on stage and everyone has these moments because it's real.
And it's this idea that everything on stage is controlled, that it is it's rehearsed, it's been done before, it's a known quantity.
That's why live TV shows, I think, have a certain amount of energy and excitement to them, even though it's TV and the medium is slightly more removed,
And you can't get that on YouTube.
No.
Are you having trouble recruiting young people into the theater who may be drawn into doing their own webcam show or something?
Well, I do think that there are so many technical options for students. Yeah. And I think when I was growing up, there was a certain kind of young person that ended up being a technician. I don't think it's changed with the actors very much. They have outlets and they can Instagram their little things and music, and that
fair enough,
that's just done. But I think our technical people, like the really skilled operators and designers of those things, have more options now with computer animation or whatever it is they're doing. But I also find that those things then come back to the theater. So you're looking at, what can we do with, LED screens, or what can we do with projection? What can we do with sound? Sound's a great example of a thing that's just really blossomed in terms of.
Do you feel that you have to create spectacle like that, like use LED screens and like? Yeah, I mean, are you competing with everything else out there in the world?
It's a great question. I think there's a time and a place for spectacle. Personally, I really like spectacle because I think live spectacle is something that you can't get other places. Give me a giant song and dance number with glitter and moving things, and that's just not something that can be reproduced. I do think though that we we have an obligation to look modern in some ways as well. You know, like this is an ancient art form. There's no denying that. You know, yet we can't look behind the times, and I think that there's a balance. We don't need those things. We can work inside a black box and have wonderful create wonderful, meaningful theater.
Which we're doing right now.
Which we're doing right now.
This is all stage, people. So, yeah.
But we also can use the elements that people are familiar with, you know, and as long as they're being used to further the story, I think that's actually the key. If we're really trying to storytell using these things, then that's what's important.
You nailed it. You nailed it. I think I'm with you there. Yeah. So this is James Newman, the artistic director of Summer Repertory Theater.
Only in the summer.
Hey, man, great talking with you. I hope you come back again.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Great.